It's a Wednesday, January 4th. I'm Kate Czaplinski. You're watching CT Pulse.
And I'm Josh Fisher. We're waiting for Governor Malloy to deliver a State of the State address, which was only, Kate, supposed to happen about 38 minutes ago.
Right. So we're still waiting.
We're still waiting. Today's the first day of the legislative session up in Hartford. Yesterday in Washington, D.C., it was the first day of the new Congress. But before we get to some Hartford talk, we're going to talk some local politics here from Trumbull to Ridgefield and elsewhere.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on. And, later in the show, we are going to take a look back, Josh, at some of the top stories of 2016 that we didn't have a chance to get to last week. And, of course, Doug Smith will join us later. But in local politics last week, we did talk about this on Coffee Break. And, we've had Trumbull First Selectman Tim Herbst on here in the past. Well, the latest on that is that Tim Herbst has evicted state town treasurer Anthony Musto out of his office. Now, Anthony Musto is a Democrat. Tim is a Republican. They very famously battled it out often in the past, and now Tim Herbst sent him a letter before Christmas. There's a picture of the office, it's very small, saying that since Anthony Musto is not in office as much as his predecessor, who is a Republican, John Ponzio, they're going to clear out his office and put a conference room in there because it's needed. It's a very small space for a conference room, as you can see, and Anthony Musto argues, probate courts moving out of the meeting room, there's plenty of conference space, but he did admit to the Trumbull Times he's probably not going to win this battle. He expects his stuff will be moved, though of course Tim Herbst said when he visits he'll have a space for him to do work.
We're at the foot of Mr. Herbst's desk.
It's just
no paid or elected official is safe in Trumbull.
I mean, Tim Herbst has been out and about lately, especially criticizing state spending. A lot of the Democrats in the state legislature have been criticizing them, but this is just one of those really petty things. I mean, it's hard to not view it as that. No matter what the argument is, it just so happens that somebody that is one of your biggest, someone you argue with, adversaries. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. One of your biggest adversaries in town hall, all of a sudden they don't need their office.
But this is kind of a typical of a Tim Herbst move because pettiness comes with, I think that might be his middle name, Kate, because he doesn't think things through. It seems like, or maybe he's, smarter than the rest of us.
And he very well maybe.
Well, probably is. But, bro. Anyone who uses bro in a tweet is probably not the smartest person in the room. We'll get to that in a second. But, he does these sorts of things where he will, kind of act and, for example, kicking Musto out of the office where even if you're, a big Tim Herbst supporter, you can't look at this as not petty because he is an adversary. That's just
if it was someone in his own party, someone that and they really needed that space, I get it. But last November, when Herbst narrowly won his re-election bid, John Ponzio, who was his friend and his colleague, did not win re-election for treasurer, and it went to Anthony Musto, who we said at the time we knew was a big adversary of Tim's, and that was going to be a difficult working relationship, which it has been in a lot of ways, and now.
But and this is we talked about this last year, where. It just to show the pettiness of Mr. Herbst, where he had to publish a text that he got from someone who ran for town council or for Board of Finance and lost in Trumbull, and then he had to then stick this to his opponent, Vicky Tesoro, who he beat. He had to link her months after the election that someone swore at him in a text. And then, of course, then that person has a text from Tim Herbst where he uses the middle finger emoji. But it's a typicalness of Tim Herbst to not think things through and just kind of act.
Now we did have him on the show in the past to defend himself in that case that Josh was just mentioning. I think his argument at the time was, he talks straight to people. He gets a lot of heat on social media that he thinks is very nasty, and he doesn't think the Democrats do anything to quell that. So he thinks that it's fair to kind of bring up some of these other things.
Well, he thinks it's fair for him to do it, but it's unfair for anybody else to do it. That's Tim Herbst is, he'd make a great dictator, as we said, in the 80s in a South American country or maybe one of the islands out there. I mean, that would have been a great job for him. He's kind of born in the wrong era.
Well, he is looking on moving on up, it would seem, because lately he's just all over state spending and state politics. There's been a lot of news stories lately about him exploring exploring how much senators are expensing as far as gas and padding pensions. And there was some interesting Twitter exchanges just a couple weeks ago with Senate Majority Leader Bob Duff. I know we have some screenshots of some of those, but basically Tim Herbst was calling out Duff and other members of his party. And, Bob Duff responded, "Doing this on the town's clock, or is this a lunch break? I'm sure the taxpayers want to know." And that was in response to Tim saying, "I'm looking over your mileage right now. Fortunately, you're not as chronic an abuser as Joe Crisco." And then also the GOP's very own Keystone Cop, "Fire up the siren," and Tim Herbst saying, "Keep ducking and weaving."
But see, this is the thing, though, and and I love Bob Duff. He was funny today because we were just, he has a sense of humor, and you can't have a discussion with Tim Herbst because Tim Herbst doesn't have a sense of humor, and he doesn't understand when someone's being sarcastic or being funny, because he takes everything very seriously, particularly himself. Because I guess someone has to take Tim Herbst seriously. But it just is, but Tim Herbst is talking about being, that the Senate's spending too much money. We got bad timing by Tom Kelly, the Democratic town chairman of Trumbull, sent out a press release on New Year's Eve. Tom, that's not really the best time to send out press releases.
We don't notice it. We're all checked out.
So, you might as well send it on Saturday morning or Friday night. But about how Anthony Musto refused a raise because the Democrats of Trumbull ran that there shouldn't be raises. But and Musto is going to donate the raise that he got to charity. But he also mentions in this, and says that people should not get anything more than a 1% because seniors are getting less than a 1% in their Social Security payments in a raise next year. But this was an interesting thing buried here at the bottom of this press release, Kate, saying that he does not expect Herbst to run again for first selectman because he so narrowly won. It was just a couple hundred votes that he beat Vicky Tesoro last year. And if Herbst wants to run for governor, he doesn't want to lose his reelection for first selectman.
I can't see him not doing it. That's my opinion, but I'm really interested to see what happens with that.
Right.
And some people have discussed Linda McMahon has a position now in the Trump administration. Tim Herbst has worked very closely with her. Some people are saying, could he go to Washington instead of running for governor? That's just been one of the discussions out there.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great. I think it'd be great for Connecticut.
Yeah. So, just the latest on that. In a different story, taking a different turn, looking over at Ridgefield, the Ridgefield Press has been covering the fact that a committee has been working on resettling a refugee family in Ridgefield. Now, a couple of months ago, there was a meeting on that, and you got a lot of public backlash. People that were concerned about someone who believed in Sharia law being in Ridgefield. A lot of the concerns you're seeing nationwide as far as immigration goes. Now, but the family has moved in, and the Ridgefield Press did a nice story, and Mike Retker, who's the co-chairman of that committee sponsoring the family, said it's a family of 4. The parents are in their 30s. It's 2 boys, kindergarten and preschool ages. They're Syrian, and they've been in Turkey for 2.5 years before coming to the U.S. The story goes on that they've voiced how many times they're very thankful to be in the U.S. They're also adjusting to the cold weather because they're not used to that. And the goal is to help them with their English and then on the way to getting them employed. But there's a lot on that story at theridgefieldpress.com.
It's really, I think it's a great story. And I think that, we look at some of the terrible things that have happened with some of the bad refugees who've gone into European countries such as Germany. But it's a lot harder to get into the U.S. Merkel kind of let everybody into Germany, and it's unfortunate that some of them were terrorists who have committed some horrendous acts. But the U.S., there's so many departments that these people have to go through, and so much screening. Is it possible that a bad apple gets in? I mean, that certainly is possible. But I think it was as someone who grew up in Ridgefield, I was embarrassed by the people and the things that were said at that town meeting. The awful, this racist vitriol.
There were a lot of racist overtones to it.
It was really terrible, and I think an embarrassing time for the town of Ridgefield that people would say this so publicly. This seems like a great family. The 2 parents have a medical background. They worked very hard in Turkey. They commuted 2 hours one way to work. So they think that they're going to, they do have to learn some English, but they're certainly employable people. They have young kids who will be educated here in America, and you hope grow up in Ridgefield and become a very productive part of our society.
And we should say, as much as you said there was some really awful backlash in Ridgefield, there's also been a lot of Ridgefield residents helping. In fact, there was a clothing and household goods drive. Every need that this family had, according to the organizers, was basically met right away. A lot of people donated and helped.
Oh no, that's certainly true. And this is and this is one of the great things I think about America is we're supposed to be a country that welcomes in people, and as long as you come in the legal way and you come in to be part of our society, we should be welcoming more people and more views and more backgrounds into our nation. That's we all got, unless your ancestors were Indians, we all had people come here one way or another. So none of our very few of us can date our history back here before, certainly before the 17th century. So it's never easy to come in, and it's great that there's these people welcoming this family here to America.
It's a nice story, but there's a lot more on that story at the ridgefieldpress.com. Now, Josh, a nice story. I think you actually know the writer of this story for the Stanford Advocate. Can you tell us?
This is cool. Well, yeah, my wife, who Liz, who writes for the Stanford Advocate. Got cool story. So, and this was a very Stanford Advocate story because Representative Caroline Simmons, who is a state rep from there she is from Stanford, has been dating a Republican state senator, Art Linares, right?
That's so great.
So they met at a young legislators thing. She's 30, he's 28 right now, and he knows that she reads the Stanford Advocate from cover to cover every morning. So he put an ad on the back page of the paper asking her to marry her.
And it took a little while for her to figure it out.
It took a little while.
Right?
She said that normally, she goes to read the weather on the back page of the paper, and it took a second. It said, "Dear Caroline, will you marry me? Love, Artie." And it took her a second, and then all of a sudden she realized that it was for her. And he ended up burning the eggs that he was making them for breakfast that morning, although he said he always burnt the eggs. So
it's a good trait of a state representative too, to read your local paper.
Yes, that's certainly true. That's certainly
like that.
Yeah. So it's kind of a nice little love story, and it's also nice too, the bipartisanship of this marriage. So it's going to be kind of fun.
They can make it work.
Yeah.
Can't we make it work up in Hartford?
Simmons has done a great job of moving up through in Stanford, and she's one of the more popular legislators, certainly from southwestern Connecticut, and one of the young and brighter and rising stars. And so is Linares too. At 28 years old as a state senator, he's from upstate. So this is a fun story and something that I think everybody in Hartford or in the legislative circles was talking about last week.
Oh. All right, some good news before on the holiday week. Well, we're going to step out for a break, Josh, and when we come back, we're going to see if Governor Malloy is doing the State of the State address. We can chat a little bit more about that and what he's talking about in that. We'll also take a look back on some of the top stories of 2016 after this.
Hi, this is Leo Carl from Carl Chevrolet in New Canaan, and you've heard me talk about the Chevy Volt for years. The new model gets 53 miles on EV charge daily, plus 420-mile full range. But don't take my word for it. You need to come in and test drive the Volt yourself. Visit us at 261 Elm Street in New Canaan or online at carldirect.com.
At Hoyt Livery, our goal is to always... Sam, what are you doing? We're filming a commercial.
I'm checking out the new Hoyt on the Go app. Hoyt's here!
My company developed Tranquility Mind and Body Wellness Spa 13 years ago. The building had 2 huge Olympic-sized pools in it. Builders would come, take a look to develop, and no one really knew what to do with it. Milford Bank saw our vision, and they jumped right in. They were the bank that we needed to come behind this hometown project. My name is Tina DeNaples, and I choose to bank with Milford Bank.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Manfredi New Canaan is a dream come true for locals Kim and Roberto. Their Elm Street store features Rolex, Hermes, and design jewelry collections from everyday classic gold to diamond jewelry. Manfredi offers a range of services from simple jewelry and watch repair to elegant jewelry design. Let Manfredi New Canaan help you find the perfect gift to celebrate important life moments. Visit us at 72 Elm Street, New Canaan, or online at manfredijewels.com.
Discover a world of wellness in the heart of New Canaan. Halo Studios, New Canaan's first collaborative wellness center, offers you the freedom to choose from the best and latest health, fitness, and wellness options. Inside Halo Studios, you'll find all the wellness experts you need at places like Halo Fitness, Priority Wellness, and Sama Yoga Center. Come by for a free wellness assessment, open 7 days a week at 45 Grove Street. For more information, visit halostudios.com or call 203-594-9909.
If you're watching this broadcast, you're not alone. The HAN network is available for 200,000 Connecticut cable customers on the Frontier Network. And we've also reached 1.7 million viewers on our free live streaming sports, news, and entertainment broadcasts. To reach our rapidly growing audience, contact Advertising Director Jessica Murrin at 203-273-7312 or email jessica@han.network.
Welcome back. Before we get to the state of the state, you're watching CT Pulse right now on the HAN network. We have a quick correction from the previous segment. Mr. Kelly, the Democratic town chairman of Trumbull, sent out that press release not on 12/31, but on December 30th, the Friday before.
Still a terrible day.
Yeah, Tom.
The Friday before a holiday, it just gets lost.
You should. That would have been a great press release to send out on the Tuesday morning after the holiday, when everyone comes back and no one has anything to write about.
Yeah, it's a true story.
Just a thought.
Yeah. All right.
But so let's
as news experts that we are.
something.
All right. Well, now we can talk about the state of the state. Governor Malloy is delivering it as we speak, Josh, and we've been checking it out. We actually received a copy of it before he went on. Most of the press did. So let's talk about some of the points in there. No, we're not special at all. So let's talk about some of the points.
So so he started off. He hasn't finished the speech either, but a lot of talk about the 8,000 jobs that were saved at Sikorsky Aircraft when they had a special session. I think it was back in September, right, Kate? When Sikorsky was thinking of possibly leaving, and the state did something where everyone said we shouldn't do this, but we're going to do it to save Sikorsky. And so Malloy is touting that because he says this is going to keep Sikorsky in Connecticut for another generation, providing jobs. And it nearly doubled their spending with local suppliers to almost $700 million per year over the next decade. That also, he said, this ties in with other work by United Technologies and Electric Boat. So our advanced manufacturing and defense spending here in Connecticut is doing very well. He noted that a decade ago, if anyone had told people in Connecticut that in 2017, not only would Electric Boat be ramping up their production rather than winding it down, and not only would Pratt & Whitney be planning to put thousands more people to work, and that Sikorsky would be committed to Connecticut, that people wouldn't have believed him. No mention here, of course, of General Electric leaving. So, well, we could celebrate some people staying here. And Sikorsky can only stay because they got a gigantic tax cut, which is part of one of the problems with Connecticut, where we pick and choose who gets tax cuts rather than just doing an even across the board. And it's kind of like if you stamp your feet and you whine and you moan, and you like the Democrats, you get a tax break. If you don't, and you try and put your head down and work hard, good luck. And maybe you should move to Texas. But so those are certainly some things. He said he does tell you the big theme of this speech, Kate, seemed to be predictability. That Connecticut is not. Employers can plan for the future because they know things are going to be okay. Of course, we're still facing more than $1 billion budget or $1 billion deficit in the next budget. So I don't know where that predictability comes from, but it's certainly a good talking point. What have you?
Well, just last week, town officials received notice about additional reductions in education cost sharing, which is money that the state gives that helps support the local school system. Now, we've covered these towns. They build ECS funding into their budgets, and it's always kind of a precarious budget system that happens, kind of balancing everything, trying not to make costs too big on the taxpayer. There's a lot of contractual things that always make the budget go up each year. And just last week, they were told that reductions will be applied this month and in April. The reductions will be made in a needs-directed manner whereby the ECS grant is reduced between 25 and 90% for the 25 wealthiest communities, and the 68 poorest communities in the state will only lose 1%. I mention this because in Governor Malloy's state of the state, he does talk about a new equitable system for providing town aid and supporting the school system. He says the system will be designed to be more fair, transparent, accountable, and adaptable, meaning that it will provide flexibility to fit the needs of a given community. He says this will be a fairer distribution of the state's funds. Now, of course, some of the wealthier communities in Fairfield County, I know this is not going to be good news to them because it sounds like there could still be reductions in that way. But he also talks about supporting the school districts that really do need it, and he said that help won't come without strings attached. If the state is going to play a more active role in helping less affluent communities and helping higher tax communities, part of that role will be holding local political leadership and stakeholders to substantially higher standards and greater accountability. Now, he doesn't go into detail on this, but he says next month he'll kind of unveil what his plan is as far as education funding.
Yeah, a lot of people were upset about this, down here in our little corner of the state, because these are where some of the more wealthy towns in the state are. I think that one of the things is be careful what you wish for. You ask the state to cut spending, and then you can't say, oh, well, no, don't cut that.
Don't cut that. Yeah, we need that.
But on the other side, too, there's a state law that you also lose more state financing if you reduce your budget. So all this money that these towns have been budgeting, if the state cuts what they're going to fund you, you have to keep that in your budget, basically. Otherwise, you're going to lose even more state funding. So it's not an easy thing to deal with, but you could say that certainly a town like Darien could afford this more than a town like Bristol.
Right.
Does that make it right or wrong? Maybe not, but it still is. The state has to cut a lot of spending, and no one's going to be happy if it's the one thing that you like.
Right.
And that's something that is important for everyone to remember.
Well, it's going to be an interesting budget season, I think, as we watch our local papers covering that and covering what the schools are going to do by losing that money, because they will have to find it. So that will be interesting. And just to mention, Governor Malloy also goes into the prison population, some of the positive things that have happened there. He mentions that that's dropped significantly.
Is that because there's fewer politicians in jail right now this year?
And he says
I saw Joe Ganem's at the State of the State address right now. I wonder if he got uncomfortable when that was discussed.
And high-risk violent offenders are serving more of their sentence than ever. He also says recidivism has declined substantially. He says this progress has allowed us to save taxpayers $70 million in the current fiscal year. So, some interesting facts there. And, I'm sure there will be a Republican response to the state of the state. So we'll also talk about that, of course, next week when we get that.
So it's going to be, and so that's as we move further into, we're now, it's less than 2 years until the next governor's election. So that's why you had, Mark Boughton is also at the State of the State today, and he's the Republican mayor of Danbury. And also, people constantly talk about him running for governor. He's talked about running for governor himself the past couple times, too. And Tim Herbst is another name, and you see a lot more. And when we spoke with Kevin Rennie the day after the election, last November, he said that he didn't think Malloy was going to run again. But a lot more people now are talking about thinking he will run again. He does have one of the lowest approval rating. I think Christie's approval rating might now be lower than Malloy's, which is funny because those two have had their own little rivalry, and everyone in both of their states just really can't stand them. So it'll be interesting to see if Malloy does run again, and how many Republicans all think, because that's what's happened. Over 2 years ago, all the Republicans thought, hey man, this is the year, because Malloy's so unpopular, and the Republican Party in Connecticut traditionally cannot get out of its own way to nominate a good candidate to run against a poor Democratic candidate. So, and I think that no matter what, you could go through everything that Malloy says, and it'll certainly be fun to read about all the reactions to this tomorrow and later today, Kate. But Connecticut is nowhere near doing as well as the Democrats say. And it's also nowhere near doing as poorly as the Republicans say.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle, probably leaning more towards the Republicans, or probably a little bit more right, because who can really trust Dan Malloy based on his track record of the past 6 years? But who can also really trust the Republicans based on their track record of the past 10 years?
Well, Josh, switching gears now from the state of the state, we never had a chance to take a look back at 2016 and some of the top stories across all of our 17 news sites.
Yeah, because I didn't come to work last week.
Yeah, he didn't. He's really lazy. That's why he didn't get that press release.
I got the press release.
All right. Well, so you sometimes get unusual stories that make the top list. You get a lot of tragic stories, of course, that make the top of the list. Some columns sometimes. It's kind of an interesting mix of things that we have across all the websites. In fact, the number one story, which I thought was interesting, was one from this past July in Milford. And that was that a masked man was captured ringing the doorbell of a home around 3 a.m. And that doorbell happened to have a camera, so you got a good shot of the guy. I think that's what made this so popular, and that was a big investigation there in Milford. Another story, a Milford story that made our top, it was third most read story of the year, was this first baby of the year born at Milford Hospital. Now, this is actually a story that ran on January 2nd, 2015. So this is a couple years old. The reason it's a top story this time around is that some website, I forget which one, used this photo and said that this was a story about a woman who had had, I don't know, dozens of kids with several different partners, and they used this photo, but however, another website investigated it and found out the story was completely false, and this poor woman was just in a story about having the first baby of the year at Milford Hospital with her partner. So that was kind of a wacky little internet story.
It was one of those Google image searches, and you find a photo, and this will fit, and that was put in, and unfortunately...
yeah. The Milford Mirror did do a story correcting that, saying that that is not, in fact, what happened, because she got some angry phone calls from the family about the use of that photo. So that's what made it a top story this year. Josh, anything else that's jumping out at you?
Well, what was cool was the number 5 most visited post was the Turkey Bowl, the Darien New Canaan game, which all of us here put a lot of work into beforehand, and over 40,000 people watched that. To give you an idea of how many people are coming to our website, so that was nice to see that fall within the top 5, the top 10.
Yeah, and another big top story that the Weston Forum really broke and just covered so well was this horrible animal hoarding case at a Weston house. They uncovered just hundreds of birds and snakes that were in deplorable conditions. Police were called to the house because of the smell. They were worried there were human remains in there. And those birds and snakes were rescued. Many were found dead. And that's still a process that's ongoing. I know the town is making payments to these rescue organizations to support just the amount of animals they had to take in. There were animal cruelty charges leveled at the owner who actually owned an exotic pet store in New York City, Daniel Copulus. So that story's still ongoing. I'm sure you'll be seeing updates on it at thewestonforum.com, and we'll talk about those here. That was another big story.
Is there any story that you were surprised was not in our top 10?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
But I can't think of one off the top of my head.
I was thinking the Weston murder of the parents.
The Navins.
Navins, right? And that happened all within the past year, right? And I mean, Patty Gay did some amazing reporting on that. I was surprised. I mean, it could be that since she did so many stories on it, that's why it didn't...
so many updates.
So many updates. But I mean, I thought that was some of the best reporting we saw in our company over the past year.
She did an
too.
incredible
Now, I mean,
job.
there's a lot of really good reporting too, and but I think Patty deserves certainly to be singled out for that.
Now, here's an interesting thing. This is interesting that it made the top, but it was just a kind of a write-up on Easter and Passover and why they are on the dates that they're on. That story was one of the top across everything by Kim Donnelly.
So Kim always did these stories, and Kim's no longer with us. She left for another job in another field, but she would always do these very fun stories about why is daylight saving exist? Why are Easter in this one too? And this was something. They're very informative and full. They're kind of they're evergreens too, because this is something that's been going on, particularly Easter and Passover. Passover for a few thousand years, Easter for almost about 2,000 years or so, roughly, right?
Yeah. Something like that.
Almost. So that was great, And then there's the Plaskin getting sentenced.
Christopher
Plaskin for the Law murder, right?
Yeah,
that wasn't in there too.
Yeah, that was not in there. But rounding out the top 10, we should mention Ridgefield versus Shelton in the Class XXL football semis. Rounded out that. So
that was fun.
It's exciting, and that was a big game. So very cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, we are going to take a final break, and when we come back, Doug Smith is going to join us, and we're going to see what editorial cartoons he has for us this week after this.
Connecticut is coming back to hometown banking. partner that makes small businesses feel big. Where community comes first. Where high-tech tools go hand in hand with a human touch. Where you get the know-how only neighbors can deliver. Where saving time is important too. It's time to expect more. It's time to bank well. Bank smart. Bank local. Bank well.
I really wanted something that felt like a home. Coming from a big house, I wanted the feel of a home as opposed to a condo. My property taxes on my single-family home were close to $20,000 a year. Now that I've downsized and I'm in a townhome, and because of the condo tax laws, my fees have gone from $20,000 down to about $5,300 with the star exemption. There is no other townhome that compares in the area. This is where I want to be.
On time, done right, safe and reliable. MrHandymanCT.com.
Let our satisfied customers tell it.
I have called Mr. Handyman for every reason, every occasion, every broken item, every leak. They have bailed me out on many occasions, and I would recommend them to anyone.
For any project, large or small.
MrHandymanCT.com.
Why cook it all this holiday? Avoid the stress of holiday planning and let your friends at Walter Stewart's in New Canaan do the heavy lifting. Whether you're looking to fill in with a few crowd-pleasing sides or you want us to prepare your whole feast, from cranberry sauce to pumpkin pie, we're ready to simplify your holiday. Place your order from our holiday menu and spend your holiday the right way, relaxing. Our fresh prepared holiday meals to go are designed with your busy schedule in mind. Visit us at stewartsmarket.com or at 229 Elm Street, New Canaan.
I'm Frank Granito.
And I'm Donald Ing for the HAN Network.
Tune in to Nutmeg Sports Monday through Thursday, where we bring you all the top stories from Connecticut sports.
From highlights to player interviews and expert analysis, no one gets you closer to Connecticut's games than Nutmeg Sports.
Nutmeg Sports, now Monday through Thursday at 2 p.m. on the HAN Network.
Welcome back to CT Pulse. Kate Czaplinski had to go wrap up some last-minute Christmas shopping, so it's just me and Doug Smith right now, and extra.
Yep, and the Casanuzzi's there.
You missed the hat.
I know.
Next time. So let's take a look at some of, it's been a couple weeks, Doug. Let's take a look at some of the great cartoons that are appearing in our papers this week.
Great, but looks like Shake Shack is finally opening in Darien.
Yeah, I think it opened just this week, right?
Right, and they got past the whole sign issue, so we had a little fun with that.
Yeah, they're at the old Chuck's Steakhouse location.
Yep. And this is Saddle Ridge, the development in Easton.
Right.
Now they've been trying to keep it out, and now they're saying it'll like be a danger to the well water.
Duncan.
Oh yeah, in Devon, they're going to make a new location across the street from where they presently are in Milford.
Oh, okay.
So, but anyone who's ever been on Bridgeport Avenue during the midday knows it's just a parking lot to begin with. So.
They should have a special lane where you could just leave your car.
Exactly.
And then
walk
run
over
into
the tops
Duncan.
of the other cars and get some crawlers.
And Kate and I were just talking about this.
Oh yeah.
So
cutting some budgets.
What is this running in?
That's in Weston, although it'll probably be running in some of the other papers next week because it
Will you change the dollar amount? Yeah. So
and that was actually the original one I did for Monroe, which we ended up using the previous one we just saw. But I figured I didn't really want to make fun of the Elks because they do a lot of good work.
Yes.
And I don't even think they wear antlers in their little fezzes.
The famous Roger Sherman.
Yep. And that's actually the little logo from the Roger Sherman restaurant.
Yes. So I have Kate's computer with me, Eric.
Taste of Ridgefield coming up. Guess Wilton's kind of hungry there. Can't wait.
Everyone at Wilton's always would much rather be in Ridgefield. That's my assumption, right? That's what Kevin Coleman says.
More restaurants in Ridgefield.
Yes, that's certainly true.
This was in Huntington. At the beginning of the holiday season, someone took offense to the creche scenes and the displays, and he put up his own sign about atheism.
Yes, this is in Huntington Green, right?
Yeah, and he was saying something to the extent of like religion, pollutes the mind. And,
we talked about that a couple weeks ago. And it was a sign. It was like a mean sign. It wasn't. It wasn't in the.
I mean,
vandalized.
I'm kind of agnostic, but I have no problem if someone else wants to put up a religious scene. I mean, if it makes someone happy.
Right.
Why
Exactly.
not?
Yeah. It's
So anyway, the angel there took offense at it.
World's full of sore losers. All right, what's next?
2 roads in Stratford. They're clearing the way for an addition.
The can's going to explode when they finally finish that. And
this is some more fun and games with Herbst and Musto in Trumbull. I guess he said he's taking his office away from him because he says he doesn't spend enough time in there. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
Yep.
So, Doug, do you have any New Year's resolutions before we wrap up the show?
Oh, just get through another year, I guess.
Mine's to drive the right way down one-way streets.
Sounds good.
Kate doesn't have a microphone either, so this is like my dream come true. So for Kate Czaplinski and Doug Smith, you've been watching CT Pulse on HAN Network. Nutmeg Sports is coming up live at 2. Then we have live girls basketball, Ridgefield at Stanford at 7 p.m. right here on HAN.network. See you next week.